the other side of this is, and when he made his latest push to get back in, and it was brilliant timing. I've been told that he did it simply because he realizes this is it. If it doesn't happen now, it's never going to happen again. And he seized on the reality that the veteran quarterback market wasn't as robust as we thought it was going to be. The teams out there looking to upgrade weren't as readily able to do so as maybe we thought they would, that fewer guys were moving around, that fewer spots were open, and we got a sense maybe there aren't enough good quarterbacks to go around currently. That's when he started working out in the various cities where it looked like maybe they could use an upgrade, and he was making the push. And I said at the time, this isn't going to happen. He's not going to get signed. The ship has sailed. The league has gotten away with it. Whatever the league did to him starting 5 years ago, collusion or not, either they came together under the coordination and umbrella of the NFL and decided not to do business with him, or 32 teams independently decided, sorry, too hot for us. We don't want, for the reasons you've discussed, we don't want that here. I thought there was no way they would turn back around and say, oh, let's drag ourselves back into this controversy from 5 years ago that we have gotten away from. The passage of time has allowed us to get away from it. We have the best argument. He hasn't played in 5 years. Sorry, we want somebody who's played within the last 5 years. Doesn't get into any of the other stuff if you do that. Nope, 5 years. You know, and Sims and I have talked about that in the past. At some point you get to an amount of time that's elapsed where none of the other stuff matters. All you got to say is, yeah, the guy hasn't played in 5 years. And that's why I'm stunned the Raiders even gave him a workout. Because all you have to say is, sorry, we prefer our football players who have actually had a football helmet on at some point in the last half decade. That's a minimum requirement. You have to have played football at some point in the last 5 years, and this guy hasn't. So we're going to move on to somebody else. And I said at the time, because we know what the deeper issues are, we know what the reasons have been, no one has, no owner, and I put this on the owners. And it always bugged me that the coaches and the GMs were the ones who were being asked about it when the owners weren't being pressed on it, because they're the ones who are saying, no, you're not doing that. Who has the moral courage and the financial courage to do this? And nobody did, and I didn't think any of them would. And Mark Davis, to his credit, had the moral and financial courage to do business with Colin Kaepernick for the purposes of a workout. And the NFL world did not stop spinning. And I've seen nothing about a mass boycott of the Raiders as a result of this. And maybe, Peter, just maybe, this act by Mark Davis opens the door just a little bit for some other team out there that has been thinking about when they all have. If you go into an NFL facility, they've got the big board, whether it's all touch screens or old school with names on little magnets. They all have the list of all the available players at every position, and they have them prioritized. And they look at that list of the guys who are available, and they look at the other list of the guys they have, and they, is there a guy off of this list that's better than any of the guys on the list of the guys we have? That analysis doesn't happen with Colin Kaepernick. He's not on that list of the available quarterbacks for most teams. Well, maybe he will be now for some of the teams that could use an upgrade, because Mark Davis has done something that has maybe shown you're not going to have this dramatic negative consequence if Colin Kaepernick's name is uttered in the same breath as the name of your team.
You know what team I thought of yesterday, Mike? Because I think the point that you're making right now is an excellent point. And I have looked all over the kind of weirdo media spectrum over the last couple of days for reactions to Colin Kaepernick getting a workout in Vegas. Crickets. I mean, it's just, oh, okay, Kaepernick worked out with the Raiders. I mean, it's getting a lot of headlines, but nobody is standing up and saying, that's it, I'm canceling my season tickets. NIMBY, not in my backyard, get this guy out of here. I mean, it hasn't happened. And so I started to think of a few teams that, to me, would be interesting, okay? And the first one I thought of was the Baltimore Ravens. And I thought of the Ravens for two simple reasons. Number one, this is a team that more than any other team in the NFL, wants to run the ball, wants to throw the ball in the intermediate parts of the field, wants to have a mobile quarterback to get out of trouble. Okay, what do they have? They have Lamar Jackson, who does all of that. Okay? Secondly, what happens if on August 1st, for whatever reason, Lamar Jackson's not in training camp? Are you willing to say Tyler Huntley is our guy for the year? And we're not sure whether, we're not bringing in Baker Mayfield. Are we sure that we want to risk going forward with a pretty thin quarterback group? Now, I happen to think that Lamar Jackson is going to be there in training camp. And until he's not there at the start of training camp, I don't care at all. And nobody should care. I've never one time, by the way, and I know this is jumping into something else, I've never one time at the end of a season heard, well, the reason that Team X didn't win this year is that player Y didn't show up until Labor Day weekend. It's not an issue. It never is an issue. But the point I'm making is I started to think of teams that have open minds and that might have a need down the road. So I think you're exactly right. The world is still spinning on its axis. Everything is fine. And this, if anything, does open the door for other teams that might have interest peaked to ask Colin Kaepernick in for a workout.
The problem with the Ravens, and I go back to 2017, they were thinking about bringing him in. This was pre-Lamar Jackson. This was the first year that Colin Kaepernick was available as a free agent. There was talk about the Ravens bringing him in. They were ready to bring him in. His girlfriend posted a meme on social media comparing Steve Bisciotti and Ray Lewis to two of the characters, I think, from Django Unchained, characterizing Ray Lewis as the slave and Bisciotti as the slave owner. And Ray Lewis eventually on Inside the NFL said, when me and Steve Bisciotti were talking, this is what we were talking about. We were talking about giving this kid an opportunity to get back in the NFL. Look, this is what I wanted to share with people. I've been fighting for this kid behind the scenes. I've never been against him. But then he went on to say his girl goes out and puts out this racist gesture and doesn't know we're in the back office about trying to get this guy signed. Steve Bisciotti said it himself. How can you crucify Ray Lewis when Ray Lewis is the one calling for Colin Kaepernick? So whatever she posted made Lewis look bad. At a time when Lewis claims he was working hard behind the scenes to get him a shot, they pulled the plug on it because of whatever his girlfriend did. Now, you can make a separate argument as to why anything his girlfriend does should be held against him. They're not married, right? But this was an example of the trepidation that was happening at the time. Everybody was afraid of how the fan base was going to respond. That was the key. And we were hearing it, Peter, you were hearing it too from people at the time. We're afraid that if we sign this guy, we are going to face a significant financial consequence. Big ticket people, not just season ticket holders, but suite holders canceling, people abandoning ship, and we are going to have a real financial impact that from a business standpoint isn't worth it. That was how it all got started in 2017. I think the world has changed dramatically since then. And again, as you said, based upon the reaction to Colin Kaepernick getting a workout, maybe there isn't that risk that was there 5 years ago. Maybe there won't be the same venom, the same vitriol, the same notion of how dare you? I'll never attend another NFL game. I'll never watch another game. I'll never, all the people who said never, 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 who are back now. They don't want them to go away temporarily again. So that's where I think the Ravens become a big question mark. Because you're right, for football reasons, it makes a ton of sense. Greg Roman's the offensive coordinator, for crying out loud. The guy that made Colin Kaepernick, they worked together in San Francisco to have this offense that had Ron Jaworski saying Colin Kaepernick could end up being the greatest quarterback of all time back in 2013. So it makes a ton of sense from a football standpoint. But back to what you're saying, and even though it's wrong has been happening before our eyes for 5+ years when it comes to Colin Kaepernick. Why would we think that wrong is going to suddenly become right? That's what was so stunning about what Mark Davis did. 5 years of wrong that was so baked in that we became completely and totally numb to it and accepted it. All of a sudden, in one afternoon, out of the blue, it flipped with one guy having the moral and financial courage to do what's right, to take 5 years of wrong, and even if just for a half hour on a Wednesday afternoon, make it into a right.
Mike, didn't this cross your mind in this week when you saw that he was going in for a workout? This is not the first time that Mark Davis, this spring, this is not the first time that he's spoken up for Colin Kaepernick. He spoke up for Colin Kaepernick also in the John Gruden, Mike Mayock era. And one of my first thoughts was, well, Gruden and Mayock must have nixed him working out there. And I don't know whether that's happened or not. But now I think, I don't know this, but clearly Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels have a stranglehold on that roster. They can make a decision. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels had a conversation with Mark Davis, and Mark Davis said to them something like, look, what harm could this do? No harm whatsoever. Let's just bring him in and see if he's better than Nick Mullins and Jarrett Stidham, or see if you think that he might be able to compete with these guys and make us better, in case one day Derek Carr slips on a banana peel. So that is what has gone through my mind this week when I watched this.
And that's the real question, Peter, and it's an excellent point. Is this a workout that happened because Mark Davis has been banging on Josh McDaniels and or Dave Ziegler to do it? Bring this guy in. You decide, but just bring him in. Do me a favor.
Yeah.
Do the guy that owns the team a favor and bring him in. Or is this McDaniels and Ziegler seizing upon the comments that Davis made 4 weeks ago as a green light to bring the guy in? Because McDaniels was on the opposing sideline, for example, December of 2012, when Colin Kaepernick went into Gillette Stadium and shredded Bill Belichick's defense. McDaniels witnessed it. So he knows what this guy can do. So is this we're placating the owner, or is this the owner is giving us a green light to do something we weren't really inclined to do without the green light from the owner? That's a key distinction that would help shed light on whether or not it's going to be more than just a workout.
Yeah, and look, let's see what happens in the coming days. Because as Josh McDaniels says, hey, we bring in a lot of guys for workouts. Let's see if there's any legitimacy to the fact that they might actually sign him. And, let's give him the weekend and just see what happens. Now, the other thing, as people have wondered in the last few days, well, geez, they brought him in. What if they were going to sign him? Why haven't they signed him? Well, Bill Parcells, when I used to cover the Giants, used to have a little card in his back pocket. It was called his ready list. And on his ready list were one or two players at every position on his team, one or two potential free agents that if a guy went down with a hamstring at practice today, who's the right guard, he pulls out the ready list card and he says, well, our next right guard is John Doe from University of Michigan. Well, go find him, Tim Rooney, who was their pro scout, and bring him in. I want him at practice tomorrow. And so that's how these sort of things work. So this could be a case where now that the Raiders actually have knowledge, as they go through their mini camp, let's say their full squad mandatory mini camp in June, and they finish practicing at the end of that, and McDaniels and Ziegler talk and say, man, Mullins not looking really good. Maybe we just ought to cut the cord now and sign Kaepernick. Now, they could do that. They could wait till they get an injury in training camp. They could, whatever. A lot of times what I'm saying is these workouts are simply to decide where Colin Kaepernick would be on the equivalent of what the Raiders ready list will be as you go into the summer and later in the summer in training camp.
And even before that, Peter, and you're making an excellent point, during these OTAs that are happening now, they're voluntary. They're voluntary. People like to shout they're voluntary. Well, you know what? For the guys who volunteer to show up, proceed at your own caution, because if you don't perform well at these voluntary workouts, you just can't step back and say, sorry, well, hey, it's voluntary. Don't hold it against me. I don't have to be here. No, they will cut you. Watch The Wire every day, transactions of guys getting cut. Why are they getting cut? Because they don't like what they see from these guys at these voluntary practices. It could happen next week at OTAs. They could say, Nick Mullins, he sucks. Bye-bye, Nick. Chase Garbers, well, it was fun. We gave it a try. Chase isn't the answer. Jarrett Stidham, too bad we traded for him. No, because I was in the office the other day watching the film from Kaepernick's workout. And let's watch the film from practice today. And let's watch the film from Kaepernick's workout. Yeah, see you later, Chase Garbers and or Nick Mullins and or Jarrett Stidham. And sorry to those guys, and it is a zero-sum game. It always is. If Colin Kaepernick's going to get a spot on that roster, the 90-man roster, they already got 4 quarterbacks. One of them's got to go. But you're absolutely right, Peter, and this is what I was talking about earlier. Every team's got the list of guys who are available, the list of guys on their team. Colin Kaepernick now, at least for the Raiders, presumably is on the list of available guys. His name is back on the list, maybe at the very top of the list. And will other teams do the same thing? That's the real question, because it can be debated as to whether he's good enough to be the starter for one of these teams where you look at and say, my God, you're going forward with those guys, and there's 3 or 4 teams that fit that bill. But what can't be debated is he's good enough to at least be on one of the 4 deep depth charts. 100 and what is that? 4 times 32, 142. I don't know. My math sucks. It's
128
more than 100.
is 4 times 32.
128. Thank you. 128. I used to be good in math a long time ago, believe it or not, and I know you don't believe it. But 128. Is he at least better than guy number 128? And yes, he of course he is at this point, even if he hasn't played in 5 years.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.